Alright, this time we're going to make a Les Paul DC cutaway, which is here. Here's my template. Here's the top. Got my top from Chuck from Durawoods. Chuck's a great guy. Get some really high quality top stuff you'll never see. Always buy my tops from him. Would never buy from anybody else, to be honest. So I'm going to be using a one-piece African mahogany board with a nice flame, highly flamed 5A maple top. Got my template. First thing to do would be to glue on the top to the template, but I've had enough experience to know that usually it's best to either cut the top or the bottom and go from there. So probably what I'll do is I'll end up cutting the top and then gluing the top onto the body. That way I've got, I know exactly where my center line is. I make sure the body fits correctly, know where my pickup holes are going to be and whatnot, and screw that down and put it in the press. So I'll be documenting this whole process again. I've got some 8/4 African mahogany for the neck that I'll be using. I'll be ripping that down the center and using that. So this will be my process. Show you guys as I go through and build a Les Paul double cutaway guitar here. So stay tuned for more pics. So now I've got my template drawn out on the body, so I know I'll need to draw some pickup routing holes here to the cavity, so I'll do that before I glue the top on. This is the book match top. Just wanted to show you some of the finer details as you're putting these guitars together. There is a little bit of separation here on this end, and there's just perfect on this side. So what I'll do is I'll end up moving the template up here somewhere as I get it on its center line, and then I'll use some double stick tape to double stick tape this, and then I'll cut this off with my bandsaw and put it on my pin router. So this is probably as good as it's going to get off of the center line. Draw this on here as well and know that I can screw the wood down here and here if I need it to make sure that it's stable as it's gluing down. Well, for my next feed here, I'm going to cut the top out on my jigsaw. It's a 3/8 top, so it shouldn't be that bad to cut on a jigsaw here. You know, the trick is to go slow. This was my 14-inch bandsaw that broke in the move. So now we'll cut this out slowly. Probably take a couple minutes to do this and get it done right and nice. And then we'll route and go from there. This is an old Stanley pin router that I'll use to route the top. I've got the template double stick taped on. I cut the top out on the jigsaw. No need to film that. Got my pin router. This pin router is probably, I don't know, 50, 60 years old. It's foot motion activated in terms of the height. Push the pedal down, up and down goes the arm. Tightens off here and here. Really nice router. I really like working with it. If you look at my site, I had a couple other versions of a pin router that I dumped. One was too big and heavy to move again. This one is perfect size for me. It's easy, comes apart in 3 pieces. I can move it upstairs, downstairs, wherever. With this top, I would have liked to screw it on, but I don't have a blank template, and I'm not going to make one today, just where I would screw in on the pickup covers. So what I'll do here is I'll lay this down against the pin. See how the pin guides it right under, and I will route a little bit each time. I don't think I'll be able to film this, but I'll take off probably a 1/4 inch or less each time, probably about 1/8, and just make sure I don't get any tear out. Use a downward spiral bit to make sure everything's clean. Clean cuts, upward spiral sometimes rip stuff out of your hand. So this is my routing station. There's other ways you can do an overarm router or a pin router, or you can use a top bearing and run it along this way. So what you would do, you'd get a top bearing bit and go this way. I've done that too. It's not my preferred method. You know, as I've done a lot of guitars, this has worked out best. So now I've taken 3 steps down here. What I like to do is pull off the template and route from the other side. That way I leave my template clean. I know I've got a clean backside here. Essentially what I'll do is I'll just flip the router back on now and go from this direction and take a clean top. That way I won't get any tear outs on the top coming through the bottom, which is sometimes happens, which is a real pain. So I'll show you that. I'll be done here in 1 second. So now I've got the clean edge. It's all cleaned up. I think probably the biggest thing I didn't tell you guys as I was doing this is you always want to cut your template before you get to the pin router as close to the edge as you can. That way the router doesn't move. Problem with using this type of router, there's a little bit of flex because the springs aren't perfect. So as the more wood you take out, the more this will bounce because you're feeding too fast. So if you feed slow, you're okay, but sometimes things will get ripped out of your hand. So what I always do is I cut as thin as possible as I can and then take little passes and you'll get a real smooth, clean cut. You know, in most instances I can begin sanding at 220 here and not even really worry about taking something bigger to it. So now that I got my top done, X marks the spot where I will drill before I pre-glue. So I'll drill 1, 2, 3. That's where I'll screw down the top. And then from there, what I've got is the back side here, the body. What I need to do is do some pre-routing to make my life easier. So what I'll do is I'll do the pickup cavity route, the control cavity route, and then actually may hollow out a little bit of the guitar right here, make things a little bit lighter for myself. So I'll film it as I keep going here. Before I get routing here, I'll show you my setup. Usually I've got I used to have a DeWalt, but that was too loud. I've got a Hitachi plunge router. It's best in class quietness. From there I go into an Oneida air system dust collector into my shop vac. That way the vac doesn't clog up as bad, and I got most of my chips in here. So I'll do some of the routing here now on this router, clean it up, and we'll go from there. Alright, here we go. Here's the guitar body. It's hollowed out here. Get a little bit of lighter weight. Got a couple other holes here. Top is now all set to go. What I'll do is I'll put a light layer of glue on. I'll show you how I do that. And then from there, I'll screw the top in and show you how I brace it so it doesn't move and how I get to my clamping station. This shouldn't really affect the tone of the guitar a whole ton. The pockets are not that deep. This is 1 inch, these are inches, so I shouldn't get a whole lot of resonation out of the guitar by doing this. You know, I've got the 2 bridge pins right. This is going to be for the control cavity, so I should be good to go. I'll show you my gluing here in 1 second. I think there's a big myth about how much glue you really need on a guitar top or just in general. I think a lot of people like to use too much glue, and essentially what you want to do is you want to get a nice layer of glue on the guitar body. So like here, that's probably the right amount of glue as I spread it out. You know, if you get it to something like that, that's probably not enough glue, but this is probably maybe just a bit too much. So as I spread it out, I'll spread it out over the pattern here and make sure that all my nooks and crannies are covered with a nice layer. And I say nice is not too thick, and too thick means when you put the top on, you know, you don't want it to be sliding around because you've got too much glue, and that's pretty much known to happen if you're using too much glue. So I'd say like right here, this is probably the perfect layer of glue. You know, I got a nice covering. Here I might have too much. You can see it piling up. So I'll just transfer some of it out and move it to areas where there's not enough. So that way you've got a real nice set of glue down here. You know, it's probably too thin, so move some other of the glue around. You just want a nice coating. Too much glue is really not a good thing. Too little glue and you will starve the joint. I've seen it both ways. This is kind of my method. I use my finger because I've kind of got the right feel and touch as I do this. I don't want glue dripping into my cavities, but that'll happen regardless. So here I'm going to put the top on and show you how I do it. Alright, now I've got the top down, and what I do is I grab these 1¼ screws and put them in where I've got the screws already drilled and countersunk. So as I screw down, I've got my center line right here that I line this up against. I got my outline that I could see, and as I screw this down, it should just go perfectly. So I'll show you how I clamp this down next. Alright, so now I've got this screwed in, the top screwed in with the 3 screws. Like I said, I've got a nice layer of glue. What I'll do is I'll move this over to my clamping station here, which is an old wine press. This has been custom made by myself. Essentially what this press does is it allows me to get the top down correctly glued with some rebar. So what it is, like I said, it's an old wine press that I've got a top and a bottom plate. I get the plate set up. So here's the bottom plate. Put in my top like this. Pick this up a little bit. Here's the other top plate. Both plates are the same size, so I can actually see what's going on. And essentially I just line it up, make sure it's on the press correctly, and now screw this down. And I go up here to my clamps and I start clamping the sides down, and I'll take a picture here in 1 second. Alright, so here we go. I've got the guitar body clamped in here now. You're not going to be able to see any of the really glue seeping out, but there shouldn't be a whole lot of glue seeping out. If you got tons of glue dripping out, you've probably put too much glue on. That's a big thing. So as I do this, I want to make sure I don't have a mess going on here. But essentially, like I said, this is the wine press. I've got 4 clamps on each side. I've got rebar support with the center support and side support, so I get some real good center pressure off here, and then I got the sides pushing down, and then I use clamp here in the middle, clamp here in the middle. I've got a pretty solid clamping system. I don't find many gaps after I pull these tops off. I know there's other systems out there, but this works perfectly for me. You can find these old wine presses on eBay or antique stores. I got mine on eBay. I was lucky it was a local pickup. This is that old pig iron, and it's heavy. This thing probably weighs about 100 pounds, so it's been fun lugging it up and down the stairs. So tomorrow, after this dries a full 24 hours, I'll be down here, pop the clamps off, cut out the rest of the body, brought the top, and I probably pretty much have the top done. You know, we'll get working on the neck next.